A my ponownie jesteśmy z naszą internetową transmisją. Serdecznie zapraszam Państwa na miejsca wszystkich zgromadzonych w Lublinie. Cieszymy się, że Państwo wciąż są z nami przed ekranami komputerów.
All of those who are online and offline are kindly welcome. We're here with Edwin Bendyk, who is dealing with the impact on the politics on the youth. He's working in a number of institutions, and also we have got Konstanty Gebert, a psychologist, journalist, writer, specializing in he has written in the underground press. He's the psychologist, a translator, and a writer. And we will have with us Krzysztof Stanowski, who will be moderating, and he's the director in the office of the Center of the Cooperation, International Cooperation from the city of Lublin. We are slightly older. When we look at our age, comparing to the medium age of the participants of this Congress. But I would like to ask what we know about the young people and how to talk with them in those special times, talking with them about the past, but thinking about the future, reaching back to the past. And we have an unusual opportunity to talk to the practitioners, to those who have been working with us for many years now. And I would like to start by asking, what do we know about young people today? In a week's time, we're going to have elections in Poland, and for the last nearly 2 years, we have full-scale war. Actually, it started in 2014, but it's become... And we've got a city that is a partner of Lublin that is being attacked with missiles, and we've got people who were kidnapped during a concert. So, what is the youth like in 2023? Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for invitation. But I would like to start by saying there is no category of the young people. People differ. Young people differ. There is the division into women and men, boys and girls. And they differ in their education aspirations. And also there is difference. There are two girls that get higher education per each boy that gets a higher education in Poland. It of course affects their attitude, their choices regarding politics. CBOS, Market Research Agency, asked young women about their views, and we can see that starting with 2015, the young women, approximately 40% of young people taking part in the research, rather vote for the left, while boys tend to vote for the right. But of course, it is shaped by the place of residence. It's different in the city and in the villages, but there are fewer young people living in the villages. Two important aspects in Poland. There was a time, very important time, in the autumn 2020, the biggest protests in the history of Poland. There were young people manifesting protecting
Ci, którzy nie
the
są z Polski,
women's
to nie muszą
right.
tego wiedzieć, ale nie wchodźmy w detale, jakby co było powodem. W każdym razie chodziło o zaostrzenie prawa aborcyjnego
There
i obrona praw
was
kobiet. Rzeczywiście to
the
były setki tysięcy młodych ludzi
abortion
z
law
deklaracji, bo
that
nie wiemy, nie
was
policzyliśmy, ale
passed,
w wieku
and
do
that
30 roku
was
25% deklaruje, że
tighter.
uczestniczyło. No nie było takiego ruchu
And
wcześniejszy w 2012.
it is the first, let's say,
W wieku do
movement
30 lat
one
roku deklarowała, że by na tych marszach w 600 miastach,
for
jak mówię,
young
czyli
people
miast
in their
jest w Polsce około
20s,
1000, czyli
they
znowu
declared
zdecydowana
that they
większość
took
była
part
miejscem
in those
tych protestów. To był
manifestations.
formacyjnie niezwykle istotny moment, ale on się zakończył
But
dwoma
let's end
bardzo
it
traumatycznymi doświadczeniami
in two
dla tych młodych
traumatic
ludzi. Pierwsze, bezprecedensowa przemoc
events.
państwa. Na początku to
One,
wyglądało
that
bardzo
was
niewinnie.
an
Po tygodniu
unprecedented
skończyło się
violence
po
of
prostu
the
brutalnymi
state.
akcjami policji rozbijającymi
There
te
was
protesty. I
police
my cały czas
that
pracujemy w fundacji, tutaj mówię, z młodymi aktywistami,
acted
aktywistami z tamtego czasu i teraz dzisiaj się
violently.
I to jest dla nich autentyczna trauma.
And
Oni po prostu nie byli na
the
to
young
w żaden
people
sposób
who
przygotowani.
were affected by it,
Może w ten sposób
they
pokojowo
ended
przecież
up
manifestacje
with a trauma.
zaatakować. Ale drugie doświadczenie, nie mniej
And the
dojmujące,
second
to jest
experience
reakcja establishmentu, tak to nazwijmy,
was the response of the cultural or political
My po
establishment,
prostu nie potraktowaliśmy ich
and
poważnie.
it's because
Mówiliśmy im, co mają
we,
robić,
the older
jak
ones,
mają
we
myśleć o
did
polityce, nie
not
słuchając, co oni myślą
listen
o
to
polityce.
them.
Oni dokładnie powiedzieli, co myślą.
And they
Takie było
told
hasło.
us
Nie wiem, czy da się to
what
przetłumaczyć
they
dobrze. Jedno z ważniejszych haseł
wanted
organizacji.
to think.
Podmiot nie zgadza się z orzeczeniem.
And they said
Ale
that
no właśnie chodziło o ten
in
podmiot.
the
Myśmy tego nie
entity,
potraktowali ich podmiotowo.
the
I dzisiaj,
the
jeżeli
subject
widzimy bardzo
does
niskie
not agree with the
deklaracje udziału w
object.
wyborach,
So
największy poziom niezdecydowania, wynika z tego. Oni
now
nie są
people are
przekonani,
undecided.
że
Young
warto
people,
stawiać na polityków, którzy są zupełnie innego
they
pokolenia,
do not
którzy ich poważnie nie
feel they
potraktowali.
can
To jest
vote for any
jeden fakt.
politicians
Drugi,
that do
myślę,
not
że jeszcze bardziej
treat
dojmujący,
them
i już kończę tę
seriously.
wypowiedź. No to jest doświadczenie po części z tym związane,
And
ale oczywiście pandemia.
of course,
która
there
na
is
całym
also
świecie
the
dotknęła
pandemic,
głównie ludzi młodych,
which affected
nieuzasadnione
mainly
represje
the young
wobec nich, tylko
people.
wynikające z wieku, prawda? Zamknięcie w domach
They
tylko dlatego,
had
po
to
prostu
stay
starzy chronili się przed młodymi,
closed
tak? Żeby nie wiadomo
in
dlaczego.
homes.
System edukacji, który nie
The
jest dostosowany.
older people had
Czy mógł być,
to
to jest inne pytanie, ale na
defend,
pewno
sort
nie
of,
był.
or be
No i dzisiaj
protected
mamy,
against.
dobrze rozpoznaną sytuację narastania fali
And
depresji.
now
prób
we can
samobójczych
see
i
there is a
samobójstw.
lot of depression
Odpowiadamy
and
na
a growing
to,
wave
nie
of
do znaczy częściowo słusznie, to znaczy,
suicides.
zwrócę uwagę, że nie ma opieki psychologicznej, terapii.
There is
tak
not
dalej, że
enough
tutaj jest wielki deficyt,
psychological
ale nie zwracają uwagi na
help
coś innego, na to,
or
w czasach, kiedy
therapies.
głównie się psychologizuje, a nie myśli o strukturach społecznych.
When you
klasyk
look
socjologii, Emil
at
Durkheim,
Emil
powiedział,
Durkheim,
że wzrost liczby samobójstw jest
he
oznaką
said
anomii.
that the growing
Znaczy,
number
ci młodzi
of suicides
albo sami wyszli ze
is
społeczeństwa, albo myśmy ich ze
the
społeczeństwa
sign
wypluli. Nie
that
zintegrowaliśmy
those
właśnie.
young
To się łączy z tym
people,
poprzednim. Nie
they
rozumiemy, czego
actually
oni potrzebujemy,
got
nie włączyliśmy ich
alienated. We
do
do not understand the young
współdecydowania o losie
people.
wspólnoty,
They
będąc
do
poza
not
nią, nie
co-decide
mając struktur
about
wsparcia,
the
sama terapia nie wystarczy.
community,
To po
and
prostu kończy się
treatment,
jako
a
czymś
therapy is
zupełnie
not
ostatnia rzecz.
enough,
To się wiąże oczywiście z najbardziej dojmującym i nieusuwalnym
which
faktem,
is
dotyczącym nie tylko
related
polskiego społeczeństwa, ale my dopiero rozumiemy,
to
co
the
to znaczy.
fact that
To
is
jest
present
zmiana
not only in the
2007
Polish
roku, kiedy były
society,
wybory,
namely
tamtych
the
wyborach decydowali
demographic
młodzi ludzie.
change.
Ich mobilizacja
And the
bezprecedensowa
previous
wtedy. Ale
elections,
wtedy
the
osób do
young
29
were
roku życia było
important.
6 milionów
There were 6
i
million
tyle było
people
osób powyżej 65
who were
roku.
to,
W tej
or
chwili
under 29, the
4
same
miliony
number
jest w tej grupie
of
młodszej.
people who are over
Ponad
65.
8 milionów
Now
w tej
we've got
grupie
4
starszej.
people in the
Różnica
younger
4
group
milionów.
and
To jest zasadnicza różnica,
8
która już będzie tylko się
million
powiększać.
people
Ona
in the
oznacza
old
pytanie do nas.
age
Czy my
group.
usuniemy na bok, oddamy im władzę,
The
skoro mamy
question
przewagę liczebną i
is,
możemy każdą
if
sprawę
we
przegłosować,
are
prawda, w trosce o swój
in
interes,
majority,
niekoniecznie myśląc
can we
o swoim
give the
interesie.
voice to the young? Can we vote
No właśnie.
in their interest? Yes, because in democracy,
I stąd te odpowiedzi
our
młodych też związane to są takie, że
vote
albo
counts for
można się
more
angażować, ale
because
jeżeli
there are
demokratyczne
more
reguły gry nie
voters.
dają, no to jest pokusa przemocy i
And
radykalizacji.
of course,
Albo właśnie wyłączenie,
young
tak zwana
people
opcja exit, o
either
której mówią socjologowie,
got
przystaje na marginesie społeczeństwa, bo w nim nie
violent
mam co szukać, bo nie mam
or
narzędzi wywierania
alienated because they feel that there is nothing they can do. They have no say. And
marszach, w marszach protestów.
well, we have heard about the participation in the manifestations and how it affected the young people. Another experience is like here in Lublin, when you've got 1 out of 3 or 1 out of 4 students are from foreign countries. And what we had as exchange of students between, let's say, Poland and Germany, there were small groups over many years. Now we've got a huge number of foreign students in Polish schools. Just briefly, with an anecdote.
Miałem okazję uczestniczyć w spotkaniu z młodymi aktywistami.
Took part in a meeting with young activists,
nie tylko ukraińskiej, właśnie
and not just from Ukraine, but also Turkmenistan and other foreign countries, because there are many migrants coming to Poland. Some of them have been in Poland for a few years. And very often those activists, those migrants, very often they fight for youth. Like in the Wilanów district in Warsaw, there is a guy from Turkmenistan, and he is fighting for self-governance of students in schools. And he's no longer like a stranger to our community. He's fighting for the community. So this is a great opportunity. And again, I mean, they are our young people from abroad, but they are our young people, and they change the way we think about the world. We can see a number of actions and activities undertaken by young people. Started with the climate-related movements, then we had the women's rights movement, and we can see the continuation and diversification of those initiatives, including the migrants. Thank you. Actually, it's not just like inclusion of migrants. We have an organization set up by Ukrainian migrants, but it does not focus on the self-help to other Ukrainians. There is the power of unity. We've got the representatives of this organization with us, and this organization actually fights for the inhabitants of Lublin, because those migrants, they feel that they are inhabitants of Lublin. As Mr. Mayor said, each week, each month, in Ukraine, young people are buried. The young heroes are buried. And today, there was a young group of Israeli students heading back home, and they don't know how they are going to get there. So we need to think about history, the way we can talk about it, and not trip over it. And the destruction is not just about the political figure that burned this or that, but other aspects that we have to think about. Yes, yeah, like we are 3 senior men and trying to, make up some ideas how to change. Out of each of us, we could have like 3 younger people, because we are so old that we could, be like 3 young people. I remember there was an interview with a president, a male president of the Women's League, and he was assuring that at some point in the future, women could be the heads of the Women's League too. But so far, so good, and well, it's only for a man to do now. Our experience
rozmowy z naszymi dziećmi, tak?
With youth is very often the experience of talking to our children. So when we talk to our children, we learn and that the young people respond to us the way our children responded to us, saying, "Come on, Dad, let go." But also we need to be careful about not praising too much, like saying, "Oh, you are the future, we want to learn from you." No, how? Why should we learn? I mean, we need to know something to help. So if there is nothing they can learn from us, then why should they even talk to us if there is nothing they can learn from us? So there are two dangers. One is infantilization, and second, trying to praise it too much. And there is an institute in Warsaw called the Institute for the Research of Youth, and everybody calls it not the Institute for the Youth, but for talking in a pitying way about youth. There is a play on words in the Polish language. So actually, I have to say, there are groups of people of similar age or not, like young women in Poland, they tend to vote for the left. It's, of course, obvious. If I were a young woman in Poland, I mean, I used to be in the subversion against the communist rule in the past, so I do not blame the young women for being subversive. Now, it's a question of fundamental interests. And it's a similar thing with men, young men, they tend to vote for the right because those parties promise them that the natural order will be preserved so that you can tell your woman, shut up. That's at least the you can get, and that's the satisfaction you're going to get from your life. So it's not a question of the age. It's the response to a pathological situation they are facing now. Because, as we know, the sociological research results reveals that young generations have been growing up in a situation in which on the one hand, the power is in the hands of the old, and the old are incompetent. And every child knows that when they have to teach their parents or their grandparents how to manage the computer. The old are in power because they say, well, we've got the knowledge. But today, a situation is a bit different. You know, like the old people nowadays, they say, we don't know, and you don't know, and you can't learn anything from us. If we look at ourselves only as through the age perspective, like they are the young ones, or these are the old ones, then we will not be able to learn anything from one another. Only when we look at ourselves as people can we learn anything. The examples of young people, as we have heard, young people who are being buried in Ukraine, they are killed by other young people. This is a war that is fought in the same by the same generation. The massacre during the rock concert in Israel, at least 260 young people were killed, murdered by other young people. And this is something you cannot ignore just by saying, oh, they are young people. Some people might even say, oh, they need to sort of, let this team off. No, they are not just the young people. They are people we involved into our wars. And this is like hitting the wall with our heads. We cannot expect the young to be able to do something we were not able to do. Stop the war, if not conclude it. But this is infinitely cruel that we raise young people to take part in our wars. Perhaps one of the ways to mitigate this cruelty is remembering,
jak to pięknie Faulkner powiedział,
just as Faulkner has said,
historia się nie skończyła.
that the story has not
Czy
ended
dokładnie,
yet.
żeby zachować jego grę słów, przeszłość się nie skończyła.
So, to be precise, the past is not over. Well, the past is not even past. So, in this sense, our experience of history, I think, can be useful for the younger generations.
Nasze zwycięstwa.
Not our victories that we boast and for which we expect respect and recognition, but our failures, actually. Failures are, a source of knowledge. Well, you can, be proud of victories, of course. Well, it's really pleasant, being a veteran of a victorious battle. But you can't learn from that. On the other hand, we can learn from our failures, from our defeats, and as you said, well, how young people responded to the exclusion from politics. Let me just recall the breakthrough moment in 1918. Sorry, for getting to some ancient times. Across Poland, there were spontaneous strikes bursting out, and Lech Walesa, with the team, just traveled around and tried to extinguish those strikes. Why the strikes? Well, the young generations. Well, they were too young to take part in the earlier the strikes in the underground, in clandestine operations. So they waited a long time, under the guidance of the older generation. The older generation was supposed to know better. Well, it turned out that the older generation didn't know anything better. Well, the young people started to act. So Lech Walesa, traveled around and flagged the barricades with solidarity sign. Whereas those barricades were not built by Solidarity members, so the society had changed and acted differently. Something similar is happening now when young people. My impression is on both sides of political divide. That the old generation will decide for them. But will not pay the bill for that. We as young people will have to pay the bill. So what we can learn from history is that we should perhaps refrain from such actions, that we should maintain, this kind of elementary fairness in whatever we do. Well, if I, get a bill, I need to pay that. But if I have a bill with deferred payment for the younger generation to pay, then I should stay silent and give the opportunity to young people to have the voice. I don't think that toading to the youth is a good idea. I mean, I don't think that young generation is, much wiser than we used to be when we were young ourselves. Still, it's a kind of elementary the fairness, elementary justice to refrain ourselves from deciding what the future generation should decide. It's the last thing we should do. I mean, we have failed over all the things we could, but to give the young people bills to pay in the future, there's nothing like that. So if we don't refrain from doing so, we'll have a worse world to live in ourselves. So, if not decency, then the instinct of survival should tell us that we should deeply think on how to talk to young people so that we don't spoil the future world for even worse.
Powstał pomysł, żeby startować do europejskiej stolicy młodzieży. To nie przynosi pieniędzy.
The idea came in Lublin, came to the surface that to start in the competition of the European Youth Capital. There was a movie made by young people, and young people had the voice, and they told us, well, it's cool that we've got football pitches, good roads, infrastructure, and so on. What was missing in this picture is us, really. So, there was a positive feedback from the young people in terms of appreciation of the hard work. But there was also a clear signal that they wanted to participate, to co-decide, to co-create, and as we know, this inclusivity experience is very positive for young people. In the times when we remember, before the transformations, 5 years earlier, Professor Regulski, Andrzej Janowski, and other people we're actually planning the would-be events, the necessary reforms, if it were to turn out that we had an opportunity to put these reforms in place, for instance, in the educational system, in the local government system, and so on. So, people were jailed, actually, but, kept thinking about the future, about the tomorrow. And do we have any efforts now to think about the future? Is there anything idea on what we should do after the 15th of October? Any changes that are necessary, whether legislative or other? So, as I mentioned before, I've been very active since 2019 in our foundation. We've been meeting with young people to talk about their views on the basic problems. So we know there's differences in priorities. For instance, climate change and in the environment. Although it's not that simple. Perhaps young activists have these views and not the mass of the young people. There's a structural deficit, I would say. But those who are informed, who are aware, who are conscious about, can set priorities, and they are not always in line with our priorities. So it's good to confront the two. So if we tell them that to return to the rule of law is key, then they tell us, let's start with the school. So let's make the school observe the regulations. Let's have the first body of the local government, that is, students or pupils. The government. So they want us to deliver on that. So I think it would be a good start. Now, as far as the systemic solution goes, after last Saturday, and the reminder of that we live in a dangerous world. Well, I think that Ukraine is a good place to learn from. We mentioned cemeteries, the most tragic aspects of the current developments. Well, I have visited Vyshhorod, Lviv. So not only young people are there, and 50-year-olds that take part in this high-tech war. I mean, today's war requires competence and not just a mass of people in the trenches. And 50-year-olds can go the front lines, just like 20 years olds. And the same situation is with in state government. Valerie can be very successful on the front line in the military battle, but this success wouldn't have been possible without Sergei. There is high-tech specialist supporting that. So to understand that this is a synergy between the two groups, as Konstanty said, that we all have some specific expertise, some knowledge that when combined can give us a success. As we know, they have provided for a state resilience system. Resilience is the key word. Without resilience, look at Israel now. Israel was not resilient on that tragic Saturday. Ukraine, was actually able to absorb the shock of the 24th of February 2022 because they had the local resources. They have local militias. They have volunteers to stop the Russian army, the invasion lines, and so on. So this way of thinking is necessary. I mean, we need to shift from what the current government proposes, that is centralized administration with the single source of the wisdom and knowledge, to what we had in mind before the transformation, that is decentralization, and I would say even perhaps dispersion of knowledge, tapping into the competences of the young generation in terms of new technologies and so on. So this is the mechanism of mutual learning, from each other, from the history, from the newest history, from the course of events that we cannot anticipate, but for which we can prepare by being resilient. Well, resilience is key. I agree. We had a social assistance committee operating in Lublin, and it was an extremely interesting experience in terms of support to refugees. We knew the wave was coming. Within 5 hours of the first bombings, there's a group of people at different age. We have Mrs. Director with us, we had volunteers, 19-year-olds, We have heads of departments from the city council, representatives of NGOs, diversity of environments, and they sat together to solve the problems that they wouldn't have been able to solve on their own. So this experience of mutual respect and listening to each other, and forgetting who we represent. Well, suddenly it appeared that it's much easier for such a group of people, such a team, to attract hundreds of volunteers to help us to help the refugees. On the other hand, young people learned that only the city council can make certain decisions to streamline that assistance effort, and so on. So since then, they have organized monthly meetings to discuss such initiatives, such efforts. Now, you mentioned our children, grandchildren. I remember, a chat with my 4-year-old granddaughter. Just after the outbreak of the war, and we were walking the streets in Lublin, and she was aware that the war had broken out. And we were thinking, what we should tell her, seeing all the, crowds of people, flags, Ukrainian flags waving here and there, being aware that the world was about to change, not only in Lviv, but in Lublin as well. So, of course, those anecdotes, our chats with grandchildren, it's our boomer's way to talk about young people, I think. But just, my youngest son, when he asked me, when 5-year-old, when he asked me if that was true, that God had created the world, and so I said yes. So he asked me, so why are we to be expected to fix it? Well, so how to fix it? We should be aware that God created the world in partnership with us. That to fix the world is our joint task. So just to answer your question, the first and foremost, what we cannot do when chatting, when talking to young people or to our children or grandchildren, is that we mustn't lie. Well, Maciej, it's really a difficult question how to convey those truths that are so cruel. Well, but it's really unacceptable that even in difficult times to tell young people, to tell your children, well, everything is okay, your daddy will be here to defend you. Well, it's totally, utterly unallowable. I mean, I have an anecdote. A friend of mine, walked the street with a 7-year-old son. These were times when, with all those graffitis, with David's star on the gallows, and the child stopped, at sight of such a graffiti and asked, does it mean that we are going to gallows? So there's no avoidance technique to be used in such situations. You need to tell the child, yes, there are people who would be willing to get you to the gallows, but there are more people, there are more numerous people who would be able to defend you. And this is how the world works. Mind you, your children must have seen a lot of those clips filmed by Hamas militants with atrocities committed in Israel. So when the son asks a mom on watching such the clips, are they going to kill us? And the mom says, well, they told us they would not. So, well, mind you, we simply can't take responsibility for all the world. We can't take responsibility for how the world reacts. We should be describing the world in truthful terms. We should be able to show our children where the beautiful things are in the world, but we must not hide from our children that limited trust principle should be used versus the inimical world. And if we were to rear our children in the conviction that the evil belongs to the past and the good is for the future, well, it will be to their detriment, really. All right, so to be aware, to know, then to make some space for them, and third thing, to believe that we can be together. This would be my conclusion from this discussion. I would like to thank Edwin Bendyk and Konstanty Gebert. Thank you for being with us. We have a place where young people for 3 days will be answering the question how to do it. They will be putting forward specific suggestions and proposals. Thank you very much again for being with us. Thank you for your attention.
Ogromne podziękowania.
Thank you so much.
Państwo, za moment przerwa kawowa, a po przerwie kawowej
We'll now break for coffee, and after the break, we'll have a panel discussion on the situation of young migrants. I would also remind you that there are workshop sessions on the first and second floor, and let me just give you two accompanying events. 4 p.m. Konstanty Gebert authorship the meeting, and tomorrow Haitamaki band concert. I would like to invite all of you to these two auxiliary events. Thank you.